Welcome back everyone, and if you're new to this channel, I am Kieran Panchal and I help you navigate the crazy decade that is your 20s. So if you're trying to figure out life just like me, consider joining me on this journey by subscribing down below. Now, our 20s are a decade where you start off with so much hope and expectation about how you're going to revolutionize the world, you're going to take on the world by storm, and often by the time we get to 30 or very close to 30, we get hit with the wash of reality of life. And so today we're going to be reacting to some of the funniest memes that just sum up our 20s. Let me know what some of your memes are in the comments below. I'd love to see them, and let's jump into it. So this first one here is one that I think probably when you get over 25, I think, is you start to realize the deepness of this meme, and that is, I wish everyone would just tell each other, it's okay, I don't know what I'm doing either. Now, I feel like when you go into your 20s, you always feel like, I'm an expert in something, or I know a lot about something. And we've heard that famous quote about how you have to do something for 10,000 hours to be an expert in it. And there is just no way at the age of 20 or even at the age of 30 that you've had, one, physically the time, or two, had the focus because you've been distracted by studies and work and all that type of stuff, that you can be an expert in anything. And the thing about life, and the thing you realize, I guess, throughout your 20s, is that life is unexpected. You don't know what's around the corner. And so trying to be prepared, even having a plan for things, is really difficult. And so you have to wing it. You have to wing it. And even as you get older, even as you get into your 30s, 40s, 50s, everybody is winging it. And when you come across this realization that even the people that who you think have got their shit together actually don't, and they're just winging it, they just got a bit more experience, so they know the things not to do, that's when your mind really changes to, actually, you know what? Everyone is in this same boat, and we're all just trying to figure out life our own pace, in our own way. And when you stop trying to either act as an expert or think you are an expert, your life just becomes so much more easier, because you realize you don't have to be prepared for everything. You don't have to do 1 million hours of research in something, to start a YouTube video, to talk about a subject or whatever. Everybody is winging it. And yeah, as I said, when you come across that realization, it's honestly really eye-opening. This next one is a very interesting one. When people give me unsolicited career advice. Now, this probably most likely comes from your parents, but if you're brown like me, it probably comes from your aunts and uncles, your extended aunts and uncles in India or wherever. And it's one of, honestly, the most frustrating things. And Gary Vee talks so much about not listening to your parents, and there's kind of a balance there. But I think the thing to think about and understand these people about where they're coming from is the generation and the mindset they have. So when they were in the same situation, they were very much taught by society and by their parents as well that you had to get a job at a stable company or something like that, get a stable position, and then essentially stay there for the rest of your life and naturally progress if you're good enough, or otherwise you just stay the course and you keep that steady paycheck, and that is your career. However, now for us, it's so different, and it's so different for so many reasons, be it the internet, but I think more interestingly, kind of just the mindset shift that we now have in a modern world. I think, and a big reason for that is, I think for us being in our 20s, so much of our life has been secure and safe, particularly in the Western world, that when we get to our 20s or our late teens, we actually want to explore and branch out. Whereas our parents, particularly, I'm talking about from my perspective, from a kind of a brown family that from kind of India and Africa, that my parents and their parents had such a kind of up and down childhood and kind of teenage life and early adult life, that literally settling down was the best thing in the world from them. And that's exactly what they created for their children. But now that we've kind of, like, people like me have grown up in that stability, we're like, okay, fine, I've got that stability, and we've got so used to it, and 100% we take it for granted. We're now like, I'm gonna do something different, I wanna branch out, I wanna do whatever. And that is where I think the two kind of mindsets like kind of butt heads. But regardless, I think when it comes to career advice, and this is a note to any aunties or uncles watching this, let them figure it out themselves. We talked about previously on the first meme, like, nobody knows what they're doing. Just let us figure it out. We will get there eventually in the end. Now that in the end is different for different people, but just let us be, let us do that, let us figure it out, because when we figure it out for ourselves and not like we're being lectured on it, it's going to be so much better for us, and it's also going to strengthen that relationship with those people giving you the career advice. The kids question and the growing up in your 20s. Now this is This one is an interesting one. And growing up is difficult, man. Growing up is bloody tough. You go from being kind of 18 and going to university where your struggles are like, which party do I go out to this evening? Or, I've got this essay to do or whatever, to in your 20s where you start to have some more responsibilities and you see others around you start to get married, possibly have children. And we're going to get surrounded, obviously, by the societal norms of the kind of general process of graduate university, get a job, get married, have children, buy a house, all of that type of stuff. And so it's very easy to feel like you're behind. And I think one of the things that being at the end of my 20s now is that I've learned is that everyone moves at different paces and there is not one right or wrong pace for anyone. It's just about whatever is the right pace for you. And it can sometimes get quite peer pressure. Right? Remember peer pressure from secondary school, right? Or high school where, you felt like you had to participate in something or be part of the cool kids crew. It feels exactly like that in your 20s as well, when possibly some of your friends around you or the people around you are getting married and doing things like a more adult. And it's sometimes quite disheartening, right? If you're not on that same path or you don't want to be on that same path. And I think my advice would be, and I think many people do this, is just take your time. Do not rush into anything. People think that after your 20s, and once you get into your 30s, that's it. Your life's set after your 30s. And that's just so not true. And your 20s is as much about kind of exploring things as it is about settling down. Not to say that if you do settle down in your 20s, that's a wrong thing, because obviously, as I said, it's different for every single person. But just really kind of focusing on doing your thing, right? Doing things at your pace. Now, yes, you will be influenced and pressured by maybe friends or parents or relatives or things like that, but trying to resist that and just figuring out what your pace is and what pace you're happy with. And that might mean if you're in a relationship with somebody and they want to move at a very different pace to you, maybe that isn't the right relationship for you, but just figuring out that pace that is right for your life and that feels kind of comfortable at some point because you feel happy in your skin, but also a bit fearful because you are doing things unexpected. You are pushing yourself and putting yourself out there. Finding that balance and figuring out your own pace is what the 20s are for, not, I think, for settling down. And that time there's plenty of time for that to come. And so finding that kind of unsuitably uncomfortable part of your life in your 20s, I think is just super, super important. When I look at my bank account now, it's so interesting because in your 20s, when you first kind of get a job, it's the first time let's say for the argument's sake, let's say you got a corporate job and you have probably more money coming in your account on a regular basis than you ever have had before. And I did a video a little while ago, a month or so back, on what you should do with your first paycheck, because when you have that first kind of set of money, it's so difficult to know what the hell to do with it. And it's very easy to, basically just spunk your money, right, on kind of material things or whatever. And when you start getting into at the beginning, it's fine, right? It's not a problem because you possibly could be living at home, but let's say for argument's sake, you're not living at home. Those expenses that become a mandatory expense for you, an absolute need, they grow so quickly. And I think even going to university and college doesn't necessarily prepare you for what those monthly expenditures are, because you have rent, right, at uni or at college, but that's probably about it. But when you move out and you're living on your own, you've got your rent, you've got your utilities, you've got your kind of internet, possibly you've got any entertainment stuff you want to do, you've got your phone stuff, you've got any other kind of subscriptions you might have and things like that. And so that portion of money, which may initially seem like such a large amount of money, like, oh my God, I've got this amount of money for the first time in my account coming in regularly, it all of a sudden goes from, damn, I have so much money, to holy crap, how can I have gone from having so much money to having so little money to actually live my life? And so a lot of the things that are important to read about and listen about when you first start working is about how to actually kind of separate your money. And so it's important in that stage though in your life to still do the things you want to do. And so it's not so about being tight and not spending your money. It's just about being in control of your money and figuring out what you want to spend your money on, so you can actually still do the things you want to do. If it's traveling you want to do, if it's I don't know, spending money on YouTube equipment because you want to make videos, whatever it might be, but it's just about being in control of your money. And it feels very, very easy, and it can happen very easily that you lose complete control of your money, mainly because of all of the kind of needs expenses that happen. And so figuring out a system that works for you in terms of controlling your money is one of the biggest life hacks when you first start working, outside of kind of just being better at your job. This one really relates, guys. This one hits hard home, right? Trying to get your life together like Homer Simpson. Oh man, whether it's things you kind of want to do or whether it's things you need to do, trying to manage just everything, and it feels like it's so difficult. It feels like you honestly have like the weight of the world on your shoulders. And I feel like the reason it feels that way is because it's probably the first time you've really had either this much responsibility or this much either passion or this much motivation to actually do stuff, or the fact that things need to be done. And so it often feels like you're juggling so many things at the same time. And then inevitably what happens is things fall off, right? Things fall off, relationships maybe fall off the track, or maybe things that you wanted to be committed to fall off the track, like, you know, you were eating well and then you stopped eating well or whatever. And that's what happens, right? When you try and juggle too many things, inevitably everything will fall down and everything will suffer. And so one of the things that I think I've learned as I've grown grayer and wiser through my 20s is to, rather than juggle 20 different things, actually focus on kind of one or two things and just focus on trying to get them better, you know, every week, every month, every year. So if that's, I don't know, your relationship, for example, then put a lot of your effort into trying to make that the best relationship possible. If it's gaming you want to get into and streaming, for example, putting all your kind of focus on there, and maybe putting aside some of the other things that maybe you have an interest in, but that actually you just don't have the time or kind of bandwidth to cope with. And that's why I think it feels difficult, and it feels like so many things are falling down because you're trying to juggle so many things. The 20-something conundrum. This is you know what? When I saw this meme for the first time, I hadn't really thought about this, but it's so true. And I feel like in your 20s, you kind of get into this, or particularly at this moment, right? So if you're I'd say if you're like kind of 20 to basically 30, right? For 20 to 30, you kind of sit in this weird kind of social conundrum. And what I mean by that is, under 20, you've got all of these kind of like born digitals, I think what they're called, right? Which is all these kids that grew up with smartphones at the age of like 8 or 7 and have grown up on Snapchat, grown up on Instagram and things like that. And they refer about memes, and they refer about songs, and they refer about a way of life that you find it really hard to relate to. And you feel, damn, I am old, right? I don't know about you guys, but I definitely feel that. And you know, even though I'd like to think that I'm, you know, a bit more kind of trendy or with the times, you know, with, you know, like making sure I follow TikTok and, you know, keeping up to what's going on YouTube and stuff, I still feel so distant from that generation now, that kind of teenager generation. And it's weird. Like, I don't feel old. Like, in my mind, I still feel like I can relate to those people when I feel like 2021, but my body sometimes reminds me of, and there's other things that happen that make me realize that I'm not that anymore, and that I'm 28 now, and I'm not that kid, and I can't fit in with that crew. But then at the other time, I don't feel like an adult just yet. Like, to me, and I'm sure to many of you guys, an adult is my parents, right? That is my kind of definition of adult. And I don't feel that yet, right? And maybe that's a generational thing, and maybe that's my mind shift that is still evolving and continuing to change, but I don't feel like I'm an adult, and I don't feel like I'm a kid or a teenager. So like, what the hell am I? Like, am I just kind of just floating through the ether, trying to figure out what it is and then I figure out whether I want to continue being a kid or become an adult? Like, what happens? This is what I'm still really struggling with and just trying to figure out. Let me know, like, have you figured out what it is you guys are doing? Because this one really hit home for me. Yeah, man, I don't know what I am these days. I really just don't know. And we'll end off with this one, which is when I realized today's high schoolers were born in 2021. When I realized, and when you think about this, it's weird, right? I was born in 93, and so I feel like I'm old and I'm like a 90s baby or whatever. And when I think now about kids born in 2000, which I actually remember the 2000. I remember the whole millennium thing. I remember, like, you know, all of the stuff that came with the millennium. And to think that kids that were born in that year, this year are turning 21, that is mind-blowing. It's just like, what? How have that many years passed? And how are kids born when I can remember now going to be 21 years old, kind of leaving university, coming into the working world? And, I find at work now, working with some of these people and working with people under 21 as well, it's like, I'm just like, my mind honestly gets blown. And this is, I think, one of the realizations you get as you get older through your 20s is, holy crap, I am getting older, even though it doesn't feel like that, it's particularly mentally, you are kind of getting older in age, right? And the kids are gonna, you should listen to the kids as well, right? The kids come up from a different generation, they think about things differently. And just as you, when you were in your early 20s, wanted people to listen to you, it's the same for that generation as well now, the people that are coming into the workplace, leaving university. And so, give them the time of day to listen to their ideas. They have a very different perspective on life, even to you, even though there's only maybe 6 or 7 years age gap between you. But yeah, man, this one's weird, man. 21 years old. So what's that? In the US, they'll be drinking and things like that. That is very, very much mind-blowing. So if you enjoyed this video, consider checking out another one here about how I figured out that Sundays can revolutionize my week and supercharge me for the week coming ahead. One of the most important lessons that I learned in my 20s at least. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe if you guys are not down below, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.